Well, hello everybody, and welcome to yet another sizzling edition, and believe me, it is sizzling this week, of the Inworld Review. It is the 10th of January of the year 2015. See, I remembered it again. And this is a very special show because it's the first week that we're actually coming to you live from the new Meta World Broadcasting Studios, which are based on the Great Canadian Grid. Way out on the Hypergrid. And this means that we're able to bring you some rather interesting stuff, including something that is not possible in Second Life. Forget real life, this is NPRISL. Indeed. But more on that later. We're also now reformatting the show slightly. We're going to try and cut it down to 90 minutes each week because of our high-resolution storage requirements. And therefore, Maria and Tara will be reading out their news as usual, but they'll be just reading the headlines without comment. And then we'll be leaving the comment to the general discussion later. In the interest of time, and since it is still more or less the new year and there isn't a great deal going on, I'm going to leave any comments I might have out this week for the moment. Other than to note that the CES thing has been going on in America, which is a consumer electronics show, and needless to say, VR content has been popping up all over the place there. If you want to know more, check out malbonesannex.blogspot.com, and where I tend to post real-world videos of demos and things like that, or twitter.com/malbones, where you'll find lots of interesting links from the week. But I'm going to avoid all that for now and hand over to Tara for a quick rundown of her news headlines. So over to you, Tara.
Thank you, Mal. And just a minute while I get everything working. This is going to take a little practice to get accustomed to a slightly different pace. And greetings from the RLSM of the U.S. Pacific Northwest, where it is not snowing, unlike a goodly part of the U.S. Since you've mentioned the Consumer Electronics Show, obviously this is the January annual event where lots of new electronics gets rolled out and hyped to the nines, and obviously the virtual reality stuff is there in spades. Although it's certainly not the only thing. There's been quite a bit of gadgetry in the way of how home automation is one other kind of buzzy thing that's been going on. Just one interesting quote in a TechCrunch interview with the Oculus founder, Oculus CEO Brendan, and talking about their showing off Crescent Bay, which is their latest greatest of what they're testing. And his comment was that Crescent Bay is the first VR experience from the company that left him without the lingering feelings of nausea that can accompany this category of gadget. He counts himself among the most sensitive to the queasy feelings that can sometimes result from a sense of imperfect immersion. He says that Crescent Bay is the best device yet from the company in terms of delivering a true sense of presence without any of those negative side effects, which I thought was kind of an interesting comment. Anyway, otherwise, let's see. In Second Life this week, in the Paris Eiffel Sim, the Paris Sim was certainly demonstrated in support of the French in the wave of the terrorist attacks there, and had unfurled banners from the beams of the virtual Eiffel Tower. And let's see, onward. Adweek. Obviously, Oculus is continuing to kind of drive a good deal of buzz and media hype, and Adweek jumped on the media hype bandwagon this week with a cover story on virtual reality as the new marketing platform. And I'll steer you to Hamlet Au's blog for his takedown on that article, and calling to task, which I thought was pretty well done on his part. If you were looking for a fun challenge in your Second Life inclined, there's a little contest, well, not contest, but a little something to do. New Second Life yearbook Flickr group. Basically, take a picture of your avatar as if it was from your high school yearbook. And it looks like that's a pretty fun little meme that's going to be around for a little bit that someone's proposed. Also, let's see. This is coming up. A little mixed up here as far as what I've got in which order. The third 1 Billion Rising event in Second Life is scheduled for Saturday, February 14th, which is coming up much faster than any of us can think of. And you can find out more about that at the official 1 Billion Rising of Second Life blog. And they're currently looking for volunteers for greeters, stage managers, security, media, and other roles. The website is 1billionrising2015.wordpress.com. Excuse me, 1billionrising.sl2015.wordpress.com. Let's see, a little bit of statistics came out with the kind of the annual look at how many regents there are in Second Life. Compared with previous years, and there was some drop off this year, but noticeably less than last. So it seems to have leveled out a bit, which is probably good news. It just means things are a little more stable. Obviously, Maria keeps us up to date on OpenSim stats, but apparently the loss was only about 3.5% for the year in total Sims. And let's see, one more item I think I had in here before. Let's see, I covered that. Oh, yeah, and I'll do a little segue here before we go to Maria. For those of you who are Kitely fans, they have regular community meetings, and they are shifting those from the weekly meetings, changing from Wednesdays to Sundays. So tomorrow is the day now. And that's at 1 p.m. Pacific time, U.S. Pacific time, is their weekly meeting at the Kitely Welcome Center. On that note, back to you, Mel.
Thank you, Tara. Very precise, and you did do your 7 minutes, which is great. I'm sure they'll get more traction at the Kitely meeting, being on the weekend, in fact. One thing I missed out earlier on is apologies for my appearance, by the way. The transfer over to the Hypergrid seems to have resulted in a bit of a calamity. My avatar has obviously undergone plastic surgery, and I've had to shave off the beard too. I really will hope that this grows out again and remedies itself very shortly. For the moment, you've got to look at this miserable wretch. Tara obviously doesn't have a show and tell today, but we have an absolutely great show and tell coming on later. I do have one show and tell, and that's I've got this lovely little bird at my feet, and these birds are being put all over the broadcast sim here. I think it adds to the flavour of the thing. Not to mention the pussycats, where I even have now got, as we'll be hearing shortly, a pussycat, just like Second Life, where when I'm not being me, I can be purry. Anyway, with that, I'm going to hand to Maria for her 7-minute news burst. Meta Maria, go, go, go.
7-minute news burst. Well, that's good, because it's been a light week this week for me here at Hypergrid Business, because of the whole job thing. I've got to get that straightened out. I've been following the CES news, but haven't really written up about it anything. But I love the fact that Butch Omni had their final release of their treadmill, and they're going to start shipping this quarter. So that's very exciting. $499, and you could walk around inside your virtual world. I've also been following the Oculus Rift lines. They've had the biggest booth there. Apparently they had a huge 2-story kind of pavilion, and they've had lines all around it all the time. So this is what everybody came to the CES to see. That's pretty exciting. OS Grid did a test of their backup system, and it worked. They, instead of having one asset server, they're now going to have 2, and one is going to be replicated in real time instantly to the other one. So if one goes down, they have a second one to fill in. They haven't said anything about whether the salvage actually took. Their last update, which was a few days ago, was that they're waiting for the shipment to arrive. And I can't believe how long this whole thing has been taking. I mean, it's since mid-August already. So anyways, no news about when the grid will be going back up. So for people who are waiting,
Waiting for that inventory, yes.
you're gonna keep waiting. But on the plus side, if you've been waiting for Zetamex to come back up, they are back up for new business, and they're charging $15 for the regions. I did some statistics estimating the size of the hidden metaverse. I called it the dark metaverse, but I like the word hidden metaverse a little bit better, as there was quite a bit of debate about it in the comments. And basically, the hidden part of the metaverse grew 4 times faster than the public grids did in 2014. And I explained how I got those numbers in the story. And I also did some statistics on the OMC, which is the open metaverse currency. And it didn't do so bad. I mean, it didn't do so good. The whole year has been one long downward slide with a tiny uptick at the bottom. And in fact, I talked to Roddie about his experience with it, and there's a quote from him about the Great Canadian Grid in the story as well. And finally, the big news of the week is Inworld is back up under new management. They've settled things. They own the domain. They've transferred everything over. I went in. Alex Pompaselli, the former owner, is still grumbling about the whole thing, but he never stops grumbling. I went in there to talk to some Brazilians. I talked to actual Brazilians in Portuguese. Thank God for Google Translate. And they told me that they're actually looking forward to better stability under Mike Hart, the new owner. And it wasn't Alex that kept bringing them back. It was their friendships, that they had a community there. And it was the community that kept bringing them back. And they're going to do just fine. So that's it for me. Did I make it under 7 minutes?
Yes, indeed, you did. That was a really good job, and I'm sure there's a few topics there, especially currency, that we'll probably come back to later in the general discussion. And I mean, what the hell, you know? It's glad to see them sorting it out. 2 new grids are better than 1 old grid, if you think that way. So it's yet another grid on the metaverse, which is absolutely wonderful. Right, now it's time to basically move over to introduce our guests here today. But before I actually do it, I'm going to introduce one guest in particular, who's also going to be bringing us a couple of musical numbers tonight. And she is already over on our stage here, waiting with her first song, I think. So I'd like to say a big welcome and hand it over to Truelie Telling, please.
Hi, Mal. Hi, everybody. I'm going to share a song about. Well, it has a video, and the video was made on OS Grid, which we just discussed, and it was made using a cast of dozens of NPCs, which Nara's going to tell us about later. So I figured that was pretty appropriate to do this song. Don't get me wrong, he's not a bad guy. He lives like he's not afraid to die. Oh, he gives me such a feeling inside, so alive, on the side of the low light. Shady days, crystal night, risky ride across the great divide, balanced on the thin side of a really sharp night on the high side of the low light. Drop me at the bank, he says, gonna get me some cash. Then he comes out running with a bang and a crash. Get your foot on the gas, gotta get away fast. didn't get it. Yeah, we heard the news flash on the side of the lowlight. Shady days, crystal night, risky ride across the great divide, balanced on the thin side of a really sharp knife on the high side. High side of the low light. They called us a modern day Bonnie and Clyde. But honestly, I never knew what he did inside. I just liked it when he let me ride. That's how I testify. I testified, and now I'm serving 7 to 10 here in the high security pen. Ain't seen the sun since I don't know when, and I can't wait to see him again on the low side of the high. No more shady days, no crystal night. Crashed and burned on that fateful rock. I took the fall. I even nailed him high on the high side. Of the low.
Yoo-hoo! Or woot, as they say around here. Yeah.
Nice job.
There's the applause.
Yay!
Your audience are too busy line dancing, of course.
Yes.
But we'll have more. We'll have more about them later. I think they're going to vanish rather quickly now for a minute. You will, of course, come over and join us on the main stage very shortly. So,
Absolutely.
yes, indeed. So, meanwhile, I'm going to introduce, while you're getting back here, the other guests we've got here with us today. Now, I should say that we were hoping, fairly certainly, to have Pathfinder Lester here, but he hasn't actually seemed to have made it. So, it means we can spend more time on our other guests, doesn't it? To summarise, as I said, this is the first show where we've moved to the hypergrid, so to speak. We'll be here every other week at least, and quite possibly eventually 3 out of 4 weeks, just going once a month to update ourselves in Second Life, because there's so much happening over here, not just on this grid, but all over the hypergrid. We're joined today, first of all, I should say that MetaWorld Broadcasting, the sim, which is more or less, it's not complete yet, but it's been built, and it's in a fit state for viewing, can be found on the Great Canadian Grid. The login URI is login.greatcanadiangrid, or one word, .ca:8002. And when you get there, just look up the region MetaWorld Broadcasting, or indeed check out all the other wonderful Canadian style and other regions, of course. But we are joined today for this very special show, really, by the CEO of Great Canadian Grid, and that is Roddie Macchi. Welcome, Roddie.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. I mean, we seem to have been in constant contact for the last few weeks, so it feels like you've been sat here all along, almost.
You're like a brother almost now.
Yeah. Oh, good to hear it. Oh, that's very kind of you. I shall return that compliment. And
you owe me $5.
Yes, indeed. And you've also brought along somebody who's also well known on the hypergrid, Butch Arnold, who is, of course, how would I describe him? Behind your coding building and sort of stuff like that, and he's also active in other things. So he's sitting next to you. Welcome, Butch.
Well, thank you very much. It's nice to be here. Nice to see you all.
Yep, it's good to have you here. You can hopefully both of you can start telling shortly, all about us and the grid itself. Before we move on, I'll also introduce Nara Malone, who's CEO of her own grid, Nara's Nuke. Welcome, Nara.
Thank you, Mel.
Nara, in particular, has a strong focus because in storytelling, which is why I put the bear reading the book right beside her, but also something called NPCs. These are non-player characters in game terminology, and they allow us to create sort of fictional avatars and duplicate avatars to perform all sorts of, in our case, stage functions, in Nara's case, visualizations of related to storytelling, and as you just saw, Truelie was on stage doing line dancing too. However, we'll talk about Great Canadian Grid and grids for a short while, and then this week Nara is going to give us the equivalent of Tara's show and tell, because she's going to move to our side stage and demonstrate these NPCs for us. But to return to general grid stuff, Roddie, tell me a little bit about Great Canadian Grid. It's how long it's been here, its history, and all the wonderful. We heard from Maria last week that in her statistics you are getting a lot of traction.
Yeah, and actually I didn't know that until I was looking at her statistics there on her Hypergrid business, and actually I'm actually quite happy, very happy. We're all very happy here by looking at it and reading it. I was kind of wondering if some of the statistics were. I know, Maria, I know how you get a lot of flack from people about your statistics sometimes, right? And you know what? They don't know what you put behind the work you put behind this to do this, and I appreciate it very much. I don't know if how I would like to know how we came up to 622%. That's what I'd like to know.
Because it's from a small start. That's how. When you start out with 2 people and you go to 10. That's like a 600% growth rate right there. It's not see. Okay. That's why the percent sign is there, and this is why I keep telling new grids, publish their numbers right from the start, because you get to benefit from being the fastest growing grid in a particular month, and usually the fastest growing grid is some small out of the way grid. I don't usually highlight them because it's like an accidental increase. Yeah. But if it's a deliberate, strategy by a small startup commercial grids that's doing this, then sure, I'll highlight them that month. And if they're the fastest growing grid, why not? I mean, it's a little nice thing to say about a grid. It is true. They are the fastest growing. And people are looking for excuses to discover new grids, reasons to go there. And with 300 grids out there, you want to differentiate yourself.
And so, in general terms, it's a very good way of gauging, the popularity of new grids coming online, the percentage by which they grow. As an indicator for the future. So I think you've done very well there. And
I think, I can't take the credit for all that now. Of course, there's a guy sitting beside me here.
Yes,
indeed.
I
have to say, it gives me, and thank God, because he's a great friend. He's a good guy. Everybody knows him as Butch Arnold in Third Rock. He's the founder and creator there, and by all means, if it wasn't for him, we probably wouldn't be going as fast as we are. Yeah, to be honest with you.
Well, I noticed, I will point out that just in the course of this last week, you've taken shipments of bigger, better, faster, more servers.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we'll come back to this a little bit later, but of course, you've also switched over your Inworld monetary system as well, literally as of a couple of days ago. But maybe we'll switch to Butch here and just get a bit of history from you, Butch, because the wonderful wonderful thing about this show and all the people we have on it, we get this wonderful sense of collaboration. Even though, between competing grids and things, because, in this formative years, so to speak, you're not really competing, you're just building the mesh of communities. Exactly. And as Roddie said, Butch, you've been involved in Third Rock Grid and you're quite well known. Maybe you'd like to give us a bit of history of yourself.
Sure, I'd love to. I got involved in all this as a refugee from Second Life. Actually, when the OpenSim project was very young, back in late 2007, I discovered it, and I downloaded it. I looked it over, and I thought, hey, I'm going to try this. I'm going to see if I can't make this stuff work and run. And by early February of 2008, I had the beginnings of Third Rock Grid online, and I had several of my friends from Second Life come over and help test and break things for me that I then had to fix and try to keep from happening again, and it just grew from there. I didn't really start selling regions per se until approximately June of that year, but once I did, the floodgates opened up. I did a couple quick permissions fix. At that time, none of the grids had a permission system in place. At that time, OpenSim was very young, and anything that you might have come into a grid and built could be taken by the next person or moved or manipulated in many ways, and well, that just wasn't going to fly. That's not how things worked in Second Life at the time, and I knew that we would have to do something about that. So I put in a quick fix to that, and Third Rock Grid actually became the first OpenSim grid with a working permission system.
It was great actually, because your colleague Tommy, isn't it, was
Yes.
was on the show. I was here last week or the week before, and of course, I asked him for the history of the grid, and I suddenly realised that I had actually rezzed in Second Life in 2007, and although I hadn't a clue at the time, I thought I was on the ball with these things. That by that time, Third Rock Grid had already begun.
Exactly.
It was a couple of years later before Lindens were experimenting with cross traffic and IBM, and then Reaction Grid and things came out. So it was a longer. The history is longer than I've been an avatar almost, which is fascinating thought.
Right, it is. It is indeed, and Third Rock Grid grew greatly for us. I had a tragedy in my life in that late summer, which required me to leave the virtual worlds for several years. But in my absence, there were several very good and responsible people that took over the runnings of Third Rock Grid and kept it alive. And I joined it again back in October of 2012, and I've been there since. But we've always, and my attitude in particular has always been that other grids aren't enemies, as some owners look at it. I believe that every grid out there is basically a person that can hand out an olive branch to those from Second Life and to those that aren't yet familiar with the platform. And it doesn't matter which grid you are, if you get a new user and your grid's not performing well, it's a reflection on OpenSim as a whole, in our community as a whole.
Absolutely.
So I've always taken the position that I'll do what I can to help whoever needs the help. All they have to do is ask.
That's right, and that's why it's funny that he said that, because that is the whole reason why Terry and I became friends, because we both have the same belief and morals when it comes to OpenSim and what we believe it should be like.
Well, I think you're onto a good thing there. It's great to see. We're all onto a good thing there, and it's if we go on like this, then we can consider the Hypergrid and the OpenSim community as one vast complex, which is, at some point going to overwhelm walled gardens like Second Life, or even OpenSim ones like Inworld.
Exactly.
So,
and I gotta say that with OpenSim, the more that they continue to grow together, I think it will outlast the closed grids, because the closed grids are just technically trying to compete with SL. So that's going to fade out.
Yeah, it's called. Yeah, SL is AOL. Every other closed grid is a weak imitation.
In the long run, I believe that OpenSim grids are going to have to put aside the competition thing and actually come together.
Very quickly before we'll obviously open up the conversation a little bit later. So very quickly before I move on to the other guests, how do you see the impact of things like Philip Rosedale working on things like Hypergrid, which are completely different systems, but are I know Philip, for example, is intrigued by the concept of the hypergrid. That sort of connection is very much in the back of his mind. Do you feel threatened or enthusiastic or anything about the happenings on that front?
Not at all. No. I actually have nothing against SL, of course, because Second Life is where we all started.
Exactly.
Let's face it.
Yeah.
Right. So how can you get mad at your dad? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. We love you, Philip.
Yeah. So if it wasn't for Second Life, we wouldn't be here. Really.
Yeah,
so you can't really get upset at that. So if they create some kind of way where this is what I think would be cool, and I think they might be doing, if they decide to create an entire world and where it branches off. So say you have Earth and you can branch off to different countries, and each one of those countries is a grid that's owned or run by either Terry or myself or whoever. I think that would be amazing. That would bring everything together.
I'm actually people have tried concepts of mirror worlds in the past, but of course that doesn't really accommodate the same universe where you have role play and fiction, and I quite like the actual mix. But I think we'll open this conversation when we come back, actually, because it's a greater topic we can all contribute to there. Okay, what I'd like to do now is move over to Truelie, who's sitting in next to the empty seat where Pathfinder should be. Welcome, Truelie.
Howdy. How y'all doing?
Yeah, great start to our new look show, live numbers.
Thank you.
It's great, listening to music, which is, it's nice to have that music, and I love that. I love even back from Second Life. My favorite musicians tend to be the troubadours, as you might call them, the people who wander around with a guitar on their back. Just pull it out and start playing.
That's me. I actually, I refer to myself as a troubadour of the metaverse.
Oh, and right.
Loads of songs. I started in 2007 too in Second Life. I almost immediately was just deluged with songs that were inspired by it and were about my life there. And I just love it. But my friend Stio invited me out to OS Grid several years ago when he moved out there. I played for him at the Maritime Club, and then OS Grid went down. Yes. And I was heartbroken. And so I got very brave, and I dived out into the metaverse where I was caught by people like Thurs Ember and Nara and dozens of others, including you, Mal, who just opened up my eyes to what was going out here. I view it as I was just given the biggest box of crayons in the universe. So
it's like a whole new audience, isn't it? I mean, it's the same thing we know and love from Second Life, but it's there's a certain thing about the intimacy of it that you recapture that, and I think sometimes Second Life and places have lost that.
I also have found something in the way of more kindred spirits per 1,000 years.
Yes, I know that
and
feeling.
I think that has to do with the fact that I've always been, I called myself an archetypal nouveau-phile. I've always been at the cutting edge of this kind of media, at least as an active observer and participant in a small way. And I just find that fascinating. But also, in Second Life, there have been waves of people leaving, and in many cases, they have been the people I found the most interesting, the artists and the educators, people that need vast amounts of prims and couldn't afford the SL rates. God knows that's me. So...
Now, you've also been involved in quite a few other things, haven't you, over and beyond your music, down the years?
Down the years, yes, I have. Yes, I have. as a musician that never really craved being a big star or that life on the road, I just wanted to play with a lot of people. So I would take day jobs, and then I might get enough money ahead or enough interesting offer from something else. I wasn't committed to it because my part was in my music. So that was when I was playing electric violin. And then, as happens with classically trained violin players, about 50% of the time there is a point at which your neck and shoulder die on you, and you will never want to play again. Yeah, so that's when I dived into computers and learned how to program that TRS-80 that they had at the junior college. Got a big 20 and a C64. Well, I had already had to use punch cards, working as a temp at the University of California. So,
it's come a long way since then, hasn't it?
It's been a long time since then. See, but Truelie is who I've always been. Just because she's 50 years younger and 50 pounds lighter, she now has all the wealth of my experience and all my good humor about it all. So,
that's a real nice way of putting it. You've actually suddenly put me in a similar frame of mind, forget the plastic surgery, I'm looking better as Malbone's the Avatar. So what the hell?
I think you look dashing.
Yeah. Okay, well, Truelie, I'm going to bring you back into the conversation later on when we open up to general conversation. I'm going to now talk to Nara, and then she's going to do a sort of show and tell. And after that, we'll join you over on the stage for a number, if that's okay.
All right, sounds perfect.
So, right. Well, finally, I shall move over to Nara and introduce Nara. Nara, of course, has her own grid. Nara's Nuke specializes in writing and uses a lot of something called NPCs. So, before you actually start giving us a demo of the NPCs, Nara, I just thought, bit of background. How did you get into all this? Obviously, starting in Second Life, but moving into the Hypergrid.
Well, I actually started in both worlds. I was in both OpenSim and Second Life at the same time. Probably only 4 years, so I guess I'm like a young avatar compared to most of you. What brought me here was another author who read one of my books and said, "Oh, you must go into virtual worlds," and I didn't know what one was. And so she introduced me to both of these, and I started my own grid about a year ago, brought in authors not from Second Life, but from my real world, my life, and we're all friends and colleagues in real life, and we just built a grid together. I think just
I must say, I came over to you one day, and sort of, there was some people there, and I thought the names are vaguely familiar, and then I realised, yes, of course, those names are familiar. They're authors.
For the most part, we're romance authors. I don't know if you read a lot of romance, but
no, I'm more of a detective science fiction person. But there's room for all of it.
Yeah, we do have all of it, but I would say the majority of us are romance authors. I think we just passed 50 regions now and about 100 users. So we've really grown this first year, and we're all amazed. I mean, it was just 3 of us about a year ago, and the grid crashed every time somebody teleported in. It was just a small little standalone. But we've had to expand to a full-size grid, and of course to hold all our NPCs. At any given time, we have between 30 and 50 running on the grid.
Right. I've been hypergridding around a bit, especially this week, desperately trying to find the materials for my skin repair. But I've been coming across an awful lot of sims that are quite heavily populated by NPCs. I didn't realise just how many. People have also got the technology, and you arrive on an empty sim, and there'll be a receptionist or somebody sweeping up the leaves and things like that. So you walk into an empty sim, but it feels like it's inhabited, and it's not interactive. You can friend the NPCs, which is a bit of a dodgy thing to do, but you feel like you're in a much more inhabited environment than it may be at a given moment. Although obviously at other times it's very inhabited anyway.
Well, that's part of it with OpenSim, is that we have lots and lots of land and very few people. And so to make up for that difference, we have to make living kind of digital beings to fill in this space when we can't be here, especially across such a vast number of time zones. So if you go to some place like the Outworld sim, where there are tribes of gorillas and flyable dragons.
Yes,
and,
I was there yesterday. Whoa.
That is an amazing sim. It's probably my favorite place in the metaverse. And all of that is NPCs. It's stunning what he does with NPCs. So you should definitely check that out.
And of course, to make the NPCs in the first place, you actually have to create an avatar for yourself to make the NPC with. So, I mean, it's actually amazing, because it's not just he's made the NPCs, but we see all these wonderful creatures that actually are avatars to in the first
they're
place.
mesh. They have to be rigged, and then you wear that rigged mesh and make a copy of yourself. Like every NPC that I put here, I had to be first before I made the NPC.
Yeah. And including the one that, as anybody watching the camera can see, has been jumping all over you while you've been talking.
Oh, the little kitten, yeah.
And I have chosen him, actually. You gave me a copy of the actual avatar for that, and that will be my default runaround avatar here, I think, just like my Pussy in Second Life. But at the moment...
So now we all know what you're going to look like.
Yep, except when I have to do shows. And that's a definite reskin job. Now, you were going to actually demonstrate some of this for us, the NPC side of this for us, Nara. Do you want to move? Do you want to move to that side stage, or come in on the audience, or
can you move the camera over there, and I'll just click from where I am.
Right, sure. So you just stay seated, and we'll just Pet Love's on camera.
So first, I'll show you this big bowl here.
That's on the.
Is a much bigger cat.
Oh yes, now he is something else, isn't he?
And I've got him leashed, but you'll actually see him running around in a lot of grids. We have rideable versions of him over at the Nook grid. We have a rideable lion, a tiger, and a cheetah, I think. So you can go out and ride him through our swamp. And I'm going to put him away because it's not fun when he comes and sits in your lap.
Yeah. Well, if you're on your own and you fancy that kind of thing.
And these two that you see standing here, the male and female avatars, are actually fashion models. For Shannon Albright started the first fashion blog, I think, last week for OpenSim.
Yes.
I know Maria's been saying we need a fashion blog. So Shannon started one, and she started making clothes. So you're looking at her first two designs, one for a woman and one for a man. And I was just thinking, if this is the first thing you made, I can't wait to see what else you do.
See what comes next. Yeah, I'm obviously scanning the man right now. Certainly better pants than I've got on.
Yeah, there's not much for men in OpenSim, so it's really nice to see her. I think she's got about 3 or 4 outfits for men made now. So it'll be nice to see what she does, and you can follow her. I think it's called Shannon's Finds on Blogspot. But
yes, I think it is. I'm not sure I've got it in my feed reader yet, but the name's familiar. I think that was the one I copied.
And John Shepard started a blog last week for men too, a fashion blog. So we're finally getting some fashions in OpenSim.
Yeah, they said when we're off air. Well, actually, if you know it, do you know John's men's fashion blog address by any chance?
I know that it's linked in the adult metaverse group on G+, but I don't know it off the top of my head. But I can get it to you later.
Yeah. We'll find it out and we'll advertise it on another show, as it were.
Right.
Okay, let's just quickly, if Pet Love's agreeable, I think if we scan around, I'm looking on my camera here. I've obviously I forgot to de-res them, but we've got about 10 avatars on a lovely little dancing pad there, doing a line dance for Truelie's music. They're doing it even though she's not playing at the moment, but these NPCs are a bit weird. Which is another great example. This, for example, it's like a dance ball where you get on and do a line dance. If you right-click and sit, you start dancing. But the person that owns this pad, in my case, can simply, if the dance floor looks a bit empty, I can simply res 5 or 10 extra avatars to dance with them. And by and large, these have come to okay. There is one lady, no, there are 3 ladies, in fact, whose prim hair has come in without textures. And this is something that it's to do with the hypergrid, basically. It's quite possible that the avatar who posed for that NPC was wearing something that can't be transferred out of the grid she was on when we made it, and therefore, although her NPC can be recorded and used in other places, the attachment she's wearing can't be. That's more or less it, isn't it, Nara?
Yes, that's it. But the assets have to exist on this grid. And so when you bring something like that in, you have to remake your NPCs to refresh those things that don't show up.
Now, I'm actually looking at them now, and I don't know whether Pet Love can actually zoom in very briefly, but there's a chap there with a cowboy hat on. He, oddly enough, is wearing my skin. That is the skin I'm going to have. But unfortunately, being an NPC, I can't ask him where he got the skin. All I have is a UUID, and I haven't been able to track it down. But he's got a nice little white beard and a little white tash, and I think a red wig will be quite appropriate. But he's going to lose a bit of weight, I'm certain of that. Also in the audience here, we've got some friends of ours here in the audience, but we've also got various people on our little camping mats, and these
those are some of my book characters, actually.
Yeah. I keep thinking I'm filming because I'm panning in on them. But there's a wide range here. You can just walk in here and think, oh, there's a wide variety of avatars, and then of course they are a wide variety, but they're all NPCs, which is absolutely great. Okay, so let me pan back up to the stage here. Okay, well, before we move into a more generalised, is there anything else, Nara, by the way, on that subject that we've missed?
No, I think we're having an NPC class next Sunday from 9 to 11 grid time.
Oh, right.
At my grid, so I can teach you how to make these and how to take some home and use on your own grid.
Great. Okay. Well, hopefully after watching this show, we'll be get a huge influx of people. This is the login is worldnarasnuke.com. I take it. Yeah. Is it
8900?
89. Yeah. But it's world.narasnuke.com 8900. Yeah.
Before we move on, Mal, I wanted to ask Nara how they're using these NPCs. This is a fascinating thing. I think I think it's unique, a way to do kind of immersive story planning. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about that.
We have a region at the Nook called Pandora, and that is our OSCC build. And what we did was we have 8 different sets there where we have various ways that we use NPCs in stories. I'm so glad you asked. And as we do these NPC classes, we'll be holding them on different parts of that build to show people. We have some where we actually have voice acting connected to the NPC, so the NPC can speak to people when they come up. We have others that include a holodeck, so when you walk in, a scene reses around you. We have one that is media on a prim, where you actually see video on the prims around the NPC's world. There are like 8 different ways that we've used NPCs to tell a story.
Whoa.
That's cool.
Yeah. Tara, while you're still here, have you got any other questions for Nara or the rest of the guests before we move on to a quick performance?
Oh, there isn't anything at the moment that occurs to me to ask, but yes, I agree that the NPC use is quite fascinating.
Okay. Well, we're going to come back very shortly and return to the various news items that we discussed earlier, if we can remember them, and get into a bit of open discussion, which is what we like to do on this show. We'll have a good. We seem to be running to time, which is absolutely brilliant. So we'll have a good half hour to do that. Meanwhile, I do believe that Truelie is back on the stage with a team of line dancers, otherwise known as NPCs. So if you're there, Truelie, I'll hand it over to you.
All right. Y'all hear me now?
Indeed we do.
Excellent. So the video that I mentioned that has a couple of dozen NPCs dancing around in it, Nara, I don't know if you've seen that. You can get to see that and a couple of other videos and some songs over at Reverb Nation. While we're talking about URLs, Reverb Nation, a Truelie telling, one word. Anyhow, I have been hypergridding around, and a song that was the first thing I wrote about, Second Life, has become very relevant because in some ways, hypergridding is like early Second Life. I want to be on the best dressed list, but I haven't got a limit to spare. I follow fashion devotedly. I'm a 3D millionaire with designer shoes. My baby blue's got lashes going out to there. If my dress doesn't rip, I got my pride and my thirst of ember underwear. But where's my hair? What's it doing over there? My shoes sticking out of my derriere. Oh, where's my hair? My boyfriend's looking like a girl named Ruth. Brown hair, a waist and boots. I sure look weird wearing this beard while the rest of me is new. They forgot our tags, our shadow is black. Can't tell my in from my yang. Loading is a drag, I'm looking like a hat. It's all my styling in vain. Oh, where's my hair? What's it doing over there? My shoes sticking out of my derriere. Oh, where's my hair? Got my animation over a spanker on the other side, a hugger that gives everyone a kiss. Model poses and dances, I wonder what my chances of making it on the side grid. Where's my hair? What's it doing over there? My shoes sticking out of my derriere. My trim skirt hanging there in midair. Oh, why am I dragging around that square? Now my foot has disappeared. Take a deep breath. Oh, I don't care, but where's my hair? Hair, 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 hair. Oh, where's my hair? Where's my hair? Hair, 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 hair. Where's my hair?
Yay!
Oh, that was wonderful! I love that song.
I know, it's a natural rhyme, isn't it? Hair and derriere.
Oh yes, and any of us who've been in
it has happened to me here on the open grids. I landed one day at Inworld Central, and there it was. Couldn't have been a more appropriate place. So.
Yeah, well, that used to happen with some frequency in Second Life, but we're going back like 7-8 years ago.
Right.
And I recall I will never forget the first time it happened to me, and I was flying, and all of a sudden, all of my attachments, my hair and my shoes, and etc., were stuck to my butt, and I was flying, and I took my hands off the keyboard, and I just sat and laughed. It just totally cracked me up. So yes, your song is very apt on that.
Absolutely great, yeah. And any song written for Second Life is just as appropriate, if not more appropriate, for Some Hope It Seems. You mentioned the grid that goes up and down anyway, but that is a completely different subject. There's two of them now, and they're both up. Okay, well, if you want to pop over here and rejoin us for the conversation, then we'll hand over to you again as we go out later when we finish the show. You can take us out with a jolly little number, as they say in the trade.
Oh, I have a wonderful takeout song. Don't worry about
yes,
it.
I seem to recall.
All right, I'll be right there.
That'd be great. Right, so we'll sit next to Taurus, since I don't think Pathfinder's make it, but anyway. So, let's get into the part of the show, as it were, which we're kind of known for, which is like open discussion of things going on and stuff like that. I'd like to, I didn't sort of bring any other news of my own in today, but I picked up on... Maria obviously is interested in the economic side of things too. I'd like to start by talking about the currency now, because Roddie, you have literally in the last week changed over the currency here, and I should point out that this grid, a Great Canadian Grid, it is on the Hypergrid, no doubt about it. You can come here, you can bring stuff in. Unless you have permissions, you can't res that stuff when you get here. But also members of your grid, Roddie, generally speaking, I know you've made some really gracious special exceptions for our particular sim, but by and large, people can't take anything out from this grid, can they? So if they create something, they can obviously export it offline and then sell it elsewhere, but they can't actually walk...
Actually, we're thinking of changing that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you can tell us more about that in a minute, but I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued, and I'm sure Maria will have comments here too, as to why you sort of changed the currency from the one you were using for the actual grid residents.
Yes, actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because it goes along with what I was talking to Maria about with her article. The reason why we decided to change, and it has nothing to do with Verwax, actually, to be honest with you. A lot of people are actually, I noticed on your article, Maria, a lot of people, they're saying stuff about it and blah, blah, blah. And you know what? Verwax is actually a good company. They're a good company, so is Podex. They're both good. They're both good providers for currency exchange and everything that you want to do on a grid. We just decided to not do that, because a lot of my residents, and I believe in this, a lot of your residents, you want what your residents want, right? So they want something that's efficient, fast, and they don't have to go through all the process that you normally have to do. Like with Verwax, you have to literally register, then register again if you want to get it through a bank or anything. If you're not going through PayPal, you got to register again through your bank to register. And by the time you do all that and then finally get the money, you have to go into your account then with Verwax send it to where you're going, get it in here, blah blah. It's a lot of work.
I presume every step in the transaction takes another commission as well, probably. So
It's a lot of
you end up with
work,
nothing.
Yeah. So finally, everyone here just said, "You know what, Roddie? That's a lot of work." And I went, "You know what? You're right." So I finally decided, thanks to Butch, we're gonna open up our own currency module here. And it'll be just like Third Rock Grid and SL, where we're going to be able to, they're going to be able to click on it, buy, go, cash out, just like SL. And that's the best way, I believe.
Yeah, I'd like to explain something here about currencies. If you have an open grid where anybody can connect a region, then you have to have extra confirmation steps on your currency. And the way the OMC works for Vervox is you get a pop-up web page where you do the confirmation, kind of like PayPal, where you get sent over to the PayPal site for the confirmation. Plus, as Roddie mentioned, Vervox owns that account, so you have to register with them and you have to go through all their steps too. If you have your own grid, and you control all the regions, and you can assure the security of your grid because you are the one who owns it, then you can skip all those confirmation steps because you trust the grid owner because that's yourself. So that's why local grid currencies can often be a lot more user-friendly for the people of that grid because they don't have that trust issue as you do on the broader hypergrid.
Right, exactly, yeah. But when you come over to our grid and actually come over to buy something, you still have to be a part of this grid in order to get the currency. You can't come over from another grid and just show up with your money. You have to actually buy the currency from here and then hand it over to your registered avatar here to buy stuff. But if you could do that, you could actually buy something from here with your registered avatar and give it to your Hypergrid friend if you wanted to. You know what I mean? It's transferable.
We also mentioned, I know you can't possibly have had time to investigate this more, but sort of arranging transactions and delivery possibly by Kitely, who are actually making a name for themselves as being able to deliver secure items to a specific grid. With export restrictions when necessary.
Yes, but I just found out the other day that our export system or security that we had here was way too high. and this has got nothing to do with Butch because he just came in finally to help us, and the last core guy we had, he made it so strict that we couldn't even hand out landmarks.
Yeah, we found this out a couple of days ago because I brought all the people in for this show and told them to take landmarks. They were able to take landmarks, but after the reboot they didn't work. And I tried to send them landmarks, and it said I didn't have permission to send my own landmark.
So this was new to me because I wanted this really tight. I wanted security tight. But holy God. Like, that's a little too tight. So people couldn't even have a note card or a landmark or nothing. So I said, I sat down and I talked to Butch beside me here, and I said, Terry, what's going on? He said, you're so tight, you're like Fort Knox. So we have to come up with a plan so that it actually makes, and this is hard to do, make everyone happy. Right? So you have to make the creators happy and the residents happy. Right?
So you've got two choices. You can use the new export permission in Singularity and Firestorm and the Evidation.
Well, actually, you know what, Maria? I'll let Terry talk more about that because he just brought something to my attention a while ago about this new export permission thing that the simulator we're running on may not be able to handle that right yet, but we're working on it. So maybe Terry could probably talk more about that.
I can show you what I've learned of that. The export permission was a project that was started, I believe it was by Melanie a year or so ago, and she put the basics in place in the code. but that project was never finished. The viewers have those. I think Singularity has it. I think CoolVL has it. I'm not sure of the others that have it, but that feature actually is not implemented in the current code. After talking with Roddie about it, I'm investigating it to see if I can't come up with a solution for that for him. But the export permission definitely is one that I think every grid that exists out there needs, because the content creators themselves, that's the big fear of everybody. Shortly before Third Rock Grid decided to open up to Hypergrid, our content creators, that was the biggest fear, was that how would they control that? Well, the export permission would definitely take care of those issues and would make everybody sleep a lot better at night. But the issue is that without those export permissions, if somebody can get something off of the grid, if they buy something, if they have it given to them by another avatar, and they take it back to, say, a self-hosted region where they have God permissions and such, they can do anything they want with that.
Yeah.
And that's really the risk of all this. And Third Rock Grid, what we've done there is basically we're taking it baby steps at a time to try to appease our content creators so that we don't upset anybody. And we're locked down pretty tight right now. We only allow exporting of landmarks and calling cards. So little by little, we're convincing the content creators on our grid that Hypergrid is good. It does come with risks, but in the end, I think once we all figure out how to work with it, it'll be great for everybody, and especially if we can come up with a solution for the export module, because it's not working in its current state.
I agree.
One thing that some commercial grids are doing is they're enabling filtered exports. Say something is full perm or your original creation, then you can take it. But if any one of the perms is not set, then it's not exportable. So that creators can decide if it's full perm, then their content can travel to Hypergrid. If not, it can't. And Kitely has a version of this where it's 2 perms that are needed instead of all 3. Is that something that you guys might consider for your grids?
I think the actual idea of the export permission that Melanie started is a very good idea, and most of the basics are there inside the code. It just needs to be completed, and I think probably a hybrid setup of maybe something that Roddie and I come up with collectively in combination with what's already there might be implemented in the future here.
Yeah. And this is a thing too that I don't agree with, is the fact that if creators have a choice, residents don't have a choice. So you know what I mean? Like if a resident, if we put no export on the grid, then that's it. That's it. The residents don't have a choice. But with creators, and we put export on the grid, then that allows the residents to do whatever they want, and the creators have a choice to choose if they want their stuff exported or not.
I think that's the key, isn't it? If you have the permissions available, but obviously they're not on by default. That way, people who want to get involved in that have to hunt around to figure out how to make something exportable and stuff. But they can if they want. But having it all off by default means that nobody's accidentally going to do something that can be exported when they don't want it to be.
Yeah. But like any work and any job, if you're the one selling and creating, so you got to do a little bit more work to make your money. You know what I mean? So you do that, but at least you have the choice. A lot of the residents won't have a choice. That's not fair.
Nara, does this impact any of the activity on your grid? You don't actually have a financial system, do you, of your own? But
no.
You do have sort of particular content.
We do make a lot of content to give away, and some of the content we make with scripts that specifically say they must be shared alike. And so my question was, what happens when you have a grid like this where everything that comes in from us that's free but says it must be shared alike suddenly gets locked into a grid with a one-way wall like that? Can some of the things I gave you, can they stay here on this grid if it's locked down? So what happens with that? Because my license and the scripts that I use to build some of those holodecks and these dance floors and dance balls all say share alike.
Well,
I think
Terry
Very
should
interesting.
answer that better.
I think from what I gather, Terry and Roddie have sorted out that is the case. The sharing is fine on this particular sim, but presumably on the main grid it isn't. So yes, Terry.
Right, you're not sharing it back to everybody who came along. It's like when you go to my grid, anybody who wants a copy can have a copy. So I've met the license.
Yeah.
But when they come here, nobody can take it away. So that's not shared like it was given.
Absolutely. Yeah. So.
Well, actually, an alternative to that would be, I mean, it's not being done in a mischief kind of way, or it's a technical limitation that will eventually be overcome. But a way to abide by that licensing would be then to also put a copy of the scripts up that that people are looking for. They could download those, and it's not a matter of not wanting to share. It's a technical limitation that we need to overcome.
Is there a way the database can keep track of what has come in to allow it out again, separate from what's created here, that stays here unless the people want to export it?
Right, exactly. Yep.
All work to be done.
And an export setting will help address a lot of those things.
Yes,
if that implementation of the export settings was completed, it would allow every content creator and any grid that used those to be able to specify whether or not they wanted their content to be able to leave the grid. If it wasn't checked, if the box wasn't checked, then no matter what the other permissions were set at, that item would not be allowed to leave the grid. And that I think is the best case scenario. It gives the choice to the content creator where it should be placed.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay,
and
before-
it at least gives them a choice too, whereas the residents don't have a choice. So.
Indeed.
I agree with that.
Interesting stuff. Before we move on to mumble, because I'm always mumbling, aren't I? I just got a quick question for Truelie. Now, I pretty much suspect that, like me, you're in this for the enjoyment of it and everything else. It's not really a commercial concern, but as a musician in Second Life, I presume you're used to the idea of tip jars and things like that.
Absolutely.
And presumably on OpenSim, where you're a traveling minstrel, the troubadour, as we said. Yep. So for your requirements, really, you need to be able to hypergrid into, I'm not saying you do this at the moment, but you ideally need to hypergrid into a given sim where you're going to perform and be able to put out a tip jar, and if there is currency available, I guess, or
well, for example, last Sunday, or the first Sunday of the year, I played at Third Rock Grid, and they have a tip jar that I could put up for myself and put my stuff up there. I have an avatar there. I have a whole lot of avatars so that I can really get deep into the grid. I didn't have a home grid up until this week because I didn't think I could afford it. First of all, I've been playing all this time at the as a means occasionally to pay for a few guitar strings and such like, So they do have some PayPal tip jars at Kitely that you can carry around with you. That's one solution. And
actually, PayPal strikes me as a very good solution. If it's as long as you've got permission.
That's an excellent idea. Yeah.
So long as you've got permission to res the PayPal.
Yes, and I would only do that where I have permission. But the truth is, I'm looking as much as I appreciate the finances. That's a long conversation. I'm playing to find my fans one at a time. I have something to say. I get so much joy out of pleasing people and realizing that I've touched them with something that touched me. So. Yep. I am basically in the truest sense of the word, even though I've worked professionally at it on and off for 50 years or so. I'm basically an amateur. I do it for the love.
Yeah.
And so I've stopped worrying about the money.
Yeah.
Now I can get a nicer skin for my third rock grid Abbey.
Yeah.
It's
it's like something you do for the love of it, and a little bit of extra income is just a bonus. I think that's that's the way Metal World Broadcasting is like that. It's as flashy and knowledgeable and everything else, which I guess we are, but we're doing it for the love of it.
Yeah, and I've been letting people
the reason why people
actually. Sorry, Truelie, we're interrupting.
Sorry, Truelie. Yeah. Sorry. The reason why a lot of people say about what they say about people doing it for the love of it, most businesses succeed because of people that actually do it for the love of it, not for the money. Yeah. Those are the ones that succeed.
But in Second Life, the people that are making money are the ones that sing your old favorites. Yeah. And they're the ones who, that people come there for a certain kind of entertainment. And I'm more demanding mentally for a lot of people. I'm definitely, I'm definitely going to, if you get into it, you're going to have quite an experience because I take you on a roller coaster.
I'm reminded in Second Life of that Leonard Cohen song, Hallelujah. How many thousand different versions I've had to sit with that.
Yeah.
I really don't like the song anymore.
Oh, yeah. Well, I know I have a lot of people that think I'm rude. I don't go and listen to too many of them, but I don't have the time. When you get to my age, every minute counts. Oh, yeah. I just want to create as much as I can and enjoy as much as I can. And I don't do no covers. Nope.
I think it's something else that you could say Second Life, in the sort of second generation after the pioneers, as it were, has fallen into, and that is, in some ways, immersion is about sort of maybe slowing the pace of your life, in this where everybody's running around insisting on being mobile, and immersion allows you to actually focus on things instead of short bites. And yet, in somewhere like Second Life, life does seem to actually just become just as hectic. Everybody wants to go to every gig, and then they want to do their own gigs, and they want to go shopping, and you can't do it all. Whereas on OpenSim, on the Hypergrid, it is a lot more leisurely, I think. At the moment, it probably won't be when it's big and successful. But
and I think in Second Life, they're much more real life social interests. And most people out here now are still pretty high tech, pretty buildery, pretty cutting edge, pretty good artistry. There's an energy out here that will dissolve into the usual mash of mating and ego strutting and so forth.
Well, talking
in any grand crowd.
Well, talking about techie, I'm keeping an eye on the clock, but I've really only one obvious thing here to move on to, but it may bear on you, Truelie, is that I should apologise possibly for the sound quality when Truelie was performing. Basically, she's performing with a mic and guitar over Skype rather than sort of streaming in full fidelity. I'm afraid that's our fault, not hers in any way, because that's the only way we could conveniently bring her music to you. But I'd like to return to Roddie, and the other thing coming up, of course, which hasn't actually changed yet, is the issue of Inworld voice and environmental sound. And you are planning to switch from the VVox voice, aren't you, to, is it Mumble?
Well, actually, again, this was Butch's creation. And what he's going to be doing is going to be bringing in for us a type of sound voice that we can use. So it's just because right now, from what I heard with Vervox, for the voice, you're only allowed so many avatars with this program to be able to listen to, right? And with the other one, you'll be able to have a lot more, so a lot more people, so it won't cut out. So it actually, to be honest with you, the best person would be Butch to talk to about this, because he's the one who's actually going to be bringing this in sometime. We won't be doing it right away, but we will be doing it shortly, like later on.
Okay, reveal all, Butch.
All right. Well, as some of you may or may not know, I'm also part of a team called Digital Worlds Group. It's a company that was formed by 5 of us, 3 people from the United States, 1 person from France, and 1 person from the Netherlands. And each one of us in that group have a specific area of strength. And that's the nice thing about the group, is collectively together we can do just about anything. I'm strong on servers and the OpenSim code and programming, PHP, JavaScript, etc. We've got people that are good at modeling meshes and textures for building. We've got another fella from France that actually takes care of building iPad apps and Android apps. And collectively, we've got a pretty good team together. The one thing that we were lacking, and still are lacking, is a viewer person. We've since partnered at times with David over at the Control Alt Studio Viewer. He's built a few custom viewers for us based on projects that we've worked on at Digital Worlds Group. And Cinder Biscuits, who used to be part of the Firestorm team, has partnered with us on a few custom viewers, and recently she's been the key person behind our Mumble Murmur voice product that we're trying to get out to the marketplace. We're having some issues with it right now that we're trying to work out, but when it's completed, it will be donated back to the Corps. We've already had some discussion with Justin. He seems interested after he takes a look at the Corps to make sure that it meets their approval. We hope to get it added into Corps, and we hope that Cinder will be able to release that viewer code out to the other viewer makers, and hopefully very soon OpenSim will have a very workable product, equal in quality to Vivox. Vivox is a great product, but the limitations of the 5 users for your free account is absolutely unusable in a grid setting. It's okay for a personal region or whatnot, but it's really unusable in a grid setting. And Mumble Murmur solution is so much better than the free switch offering that's out there right now, so much easier to set up, and it has the promise of being quite the addition to the OpenSim features.
Yeah,
go ahead.
And if it is in the OpenSim core, it will become ubiquitous pretty much without, if the viewers support it and it's in the OpenSim core, it's just going to fall into place, isn't it? In my opinion.
Yeah, we actually contracted Cinder. We paid money to have her develop the viewer part of the code, and that viewer code and the OpenSim code together collectively, we plan on using in a commercial product that we hope to release soon. But it really holds the promise of getting us all away from the free switch and the Vivox restrictions. So it's going to be a great thing for all of us, I think.
Great. Well, I'm afraid I'm looking at the clock, and we probably got about, I don't know, I can't even see the clock properly, probably 10 minutes to go or something. I just had to ask Maria and Tara if they've got any extra questions for the guests that on the sort of topics we've been talking about, or generally. Tara, maybe, or Maria, it seems to be on the button.
I just want to make sure that the Terry, that you guys email me right away when you have the Mumble stuff done, because I'm ready to post on that article. I'm ready to go.
I will most definitely. And recently we contacted Moses because we're at a sticking point on some of the issues. And I myself, personally, I don't know the viewer code. It would take me days and weeks to learn that viewer code, and that's one project that I've never tackled. So we've recently
spending another week learning stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So we've recently contacted Douglas Maxwell over at the Moses team.
Yes.
They seem to be interested in helping to further this product along, because we plan to release our bit of the code as a BSD license, which basically gives everyone the right to use it, and that will then allow them to use the mumble murmur solution instead of the free switch that they're stuck with right now. So,
Yeah, for a government grid or any big corporate grid too, they don't want their voice to be going to somebody else. They don't want their voice traffic going to Vivox or anybody. And the Mumble product means that you can run your own voice server on your own computers. And the quality difference is dramatic. I remember trying out the Vivox and the Mumble and the free switch back when the Mumble code was first released into OpenSim, and it sounds great. It sounds like Vivox sounds. Free switch sounds. I mean, it's really not. It's not usable for OpenSim really well at all. It cuts in and out. It doesn't have the spatial things that Mumble has.
Yeah. I mean, I find, sound is intriguing in virtual worlds and the work we do with them. I mean, we use Skype for this program, for example, because it's the closest approximation to a TV studio where each of us in our seats will be wearing a mic focused right by our mouth. On the other hand, Truelie, for example, under normal circumstances, would be using technology to go over an audio stream so that she gets a fuller high-fidelity sound for her music. But again, it comes over stream, so the quality is better, but there's no variable in what comes out. Whereas Inworld, and this is especially important for sound artists and people doing installations and things, you have that whole spatial quality of voice and indeed other sounds. So things can get louder as you move towards them and fainter as you move away. And it's a whole different conceptual way of thinking about sound than traditionally, where we put down recordings or we pick up telephones and it's direct from our mouth, to the other person, whereas here it's from our mouth to the environment. So, the improvements in that whole system can only be good. And I love the idea that it be part of the OpenSim core. I'm sure Justin does too. Tara.
Yeah, I was just going to comment that the psychoacoustic properties of the spatial sound of sound coming from different directions, depending upon its orientation to your avatar, is something that's clearly clearly a focus for Oculus and for High Fidelity. Have both been, I don't know, maybe what Oculus is picking up on is some of High Fidelity's work, but time will tell when those pieces start to filter out into the news stream. But the psychospatial piece of it, of hearing an avatar's voice from the direction that the avatar is, that the person you're talking to is, or if you're sitting in if you've got a group of people using Inworld Voice, that you're hearing the different avatars' voices coming from where they are relative to you. That's assuming, of course, that you're using the sound position of your avatar, which if any of you have done any machinima, that's not always, or particularly live broadcast, you can't have that setting, because then if you zoom your camera around, all of a sudden there goes your sound.
This is one of the many tricks of the trade that people don't.
You picked that one up real fast.
Yeah. And actually, I discovered something else. This is just a curiosity item. I'll mention it quickly. When I was judging the machinima contest for UWA, I download all the films, put them on my network drive, and then play them all in sequence on the big screen through the surround sound system. And in fact, some good friends of ours who make machinima, I hate to say it, actually don't take this into account. And that is, they film an outdoor scene, and the voice sounds as if it's recorded indoors. And you don't do that when you're making films. It can be done by processing the sound with the attributes of outdoors, but ideally you record the audio outdoors, or at least with a window open or something.
Well, there's always there's ways to add background to any audio to set an environment. So that's just not paying attention to the audio piece of filmography.
Anyway, I think I'm going to have to round up here. What I like to do at the end of the show is to just go around everybody in turn, just asking very quickly, sort of anything exciting that's happened to them, maybe not even to do with virtual worlds in last week, and anything coming up in the forthcoming week or weeks. I'm going to start with you, Truelie, so once you've finished, you can hop over to the stage again. So, yeah.
Well, I guess the exciting things in my life, I got me the region of my own on ATEC Grid, and it's called Truelie Tales, and it's really a storytelling sim kind of thing where I have different stations that are being created to house different songs. And I was really inspired by the Devocon storytellers and Nara, that's Nook folk, and I was my husband says, "You're working so much right now on it." It's really, I'm just like obsessed.
Yeah.
I'm
of course, we've had
stop.
Of course, we've had Caledonia Skytower on the show a couple of times too. Does she does stuff on Kitely and in Second Life, and I think it's a big thing, storytelling. I think you know, because it's that's why I was saying earlier that mirror worlds, although it's a great idea, really only accommodate the idea of panning in on the Earth and going to virtual London and going to virtual Soho, or going to anchored to reality.
No,
whereas
I'm going to I grew up on the classic fairy tales, and which of course proved to be terribly disappointing to my adult self. So I employ them quite a bit in songs and distort them from what you learned before. Truly, guys, they're not the same stories. Like flying around the Hypergrid recently, there's so many dragons. I just fell in love with dragons. Now, I loved them when I was a young teen, maybe. In my romantic days of that stuff, and boy, that's just back. I've got a lot of dragons around. And I wrote a dragon song, a story about becoming a dragon rider.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to curtail you there, and sort of also you might as well head off to the stage to take us out. We're actually at 90 minutes, so I'm now going to be in overtime mode. But talking storytelling, of course, same question really to Nara. Exciting things from last week or next week, coming weeks, whatever. Virtual or otherwise.
One thing that has just started for us is the Hypergrid nights. We used to be the evening version of Safari, and we followed their script and did it in the evening for people in this hemisphere. But we've recently switched over to scheduling our own hops, and we're now called Hypergrid nights. We meet on Wednesday evenings at 6 o'clock grid time, and we visit various grids with interesting builds.
That's how I noticed that, actually. It's actually quite good, people put the time aside. I'm afraid that time is, about an hour after I've collapsed and logged off in the UK. But it's quite convenient because it's literally, it's about the time the Hypergrid Safari on Wednesdays is finishing, and, they could come straight onto that if people are still hanging around.
Right, in the U.S., people were still at their day jobs and they couldn't go, and they kept saying, we want something like that to do. So we set it up for Wednesday night.
Oh, that's great. So, folks, if you've got a name to do on Wednesdays, it's sort of late afternoon Pacific time, you can join us on the Hypergrid Safari, which meets at a location called
Safari.
Yeah, so Safari. Nights. Yeah. Yes. I'm advertising both.
Okay.
You can join us for Hypergrid Safari, which meets at 3 p.m. on local time, Pacific, on Franco Grid, and then goes hopping around the place. And then, of course, 3 hours later, you can join Nara on worldnarazoot.com for Safari nights. Yeah, it's got a ring to it, that has. Okay, let me move on because time is of the essence here. The new regime, trying to rule it with an iron hand. Roddie, any thoughts on the last week and coming weeks, or anything interesting you want to spill very quickly?
Yeah, we're going to have major updates coming. We've already done one, as you found out, by accident. And yeah, thanks to Digital World Studio, we're going to be updating and upgrading a lot in the next while. Our first year, a lot of people would say, well, "How come you were open for the first year? Then why are you waiting?" Well, I don't know about anybody else, but when you open up a business and you open up something like a pub or club or whatever, you always you call it a soft open, where you get a lot of people to come in and you check things out, and you make sure you see what works, what doesn't, and that's what we did last year. So now we're going from there. And that's the proper thing to do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Although I must say, when you go into a newly opened bar and you find they haven't got the drinks in, that's a bit of a problem.
Yeah, exactly. So you want to make sure you got everything, you know what you're doing first before you actually start bringing people in. So I actually wasn't even going to open the grid. We were going to test it for a year and not let anybody join. But then people were asking to join, so I said, you know what, this is what I'll do then. I'll tell you, look, you can join, but this is what we're doing for the first year, and then after that, we're going to buckle down and actually do things right. And thanks to Digital World Studio, that's what we're doing. And we have also a GCG radio coming up, which is what I'm trying to get going right now, which will allow us to broadcast our own stations, our own music. And in return, because Butch is helping me, I'm also going to be trying to help him too, to do this setup for him, because that was my one of my fortes in SL, which I did for 5 years.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to rush this. You're going to have to come back very soon. There's one topic, in fact, that I didn't get around to, and because of time, we can't really, but I did want to, one of the things that attracted me, apart from your gracious offer to your grid, is the fact that a lot of virtual worlds are actually governed by the law of the servers, in other words, the territories where the servers are, and Canada, of course, is part of the Commonwealth, so I feel an affinity there. I didn't realise until he hasn't come on, but I was talking to Pathfinder the other day. He actually moved to Canada 2 years ago, and I thought he was still in Boston. Canada's the place to be, I think, and of course, I do know from another avatar in Second Life, for example, he wants to do stuff with gambling here. Now, that's not my cup of tea at all. In fact, I'm not sure I really approve. But, of course, he'll be governed by Canada law. So it's quite a big discussion, I think, for another time. As to, the nature of the hypergrid is such that the servers can be all over the world and can, be subject to different laws, and, hypergridding around can be like moving to a new country where you will have to accept that different cultures have different rules.
But the thing you got to watch, though, is a lot of people who own grids think that if they got a server in Canada, that they can run by Canadian rules, and that's not true. You have to actually own a business in Canada to be able to run the Canadian rules. Yeah.
Okay, this is a long discussion for another day. We'll have to get you back shortly for our more general discussions. Last thoughts from you, Butch?
Actually, I'm just excited to be a part of the community as a whole, and I'll continue to do my part. I've always extended my olive branch to any grid or any individual out there that needs some guidance or some advice. As I said, I've been around since 2007, so I've got a lot of knowledge I can share, and knowledge is free. Just ask. That's it.
Great. Absolutely. Okay. Any last thoughts from you, Maria, quickly?
Well, I hope that we get Terry back to talk about the Grid Owners Association, and if they're going to be funding the development of a new web-based viewer or other must-have projects. I really want to hear about that. I am putting together the grid list, the mid-month grid statistics report this month. So if you have any announcements, send them my way, maria@hypergridbusiness.com. And also, I put up a help wanted ad on OpenSim Virtual. Talo was nice enough to set up a help wanted section, so I could do that. And I'm looking for somebody to help me fix these darn scripts on Hypergrid.
And I'm looking for somebody to fix Don's scripts in virtual worlds, including camera HUDs
the
and
teleporting.
I can get them to work, but then they break.
yeah.
I can get them
Yeah,
to
mine's doing
update
that too.
sometimes, but not the other times.
Well,
And dealing with it at this point, I want to pay somebody and have them deal with it.
okay.
How old is
Okay.
your version of OpenSim? Contact me afterwards, Marie. I've got some advice for you.
I don't want advice. I want a person I can hire and then say do it.
All
I have
right.
a lot
I'll
of
get with-
advice. I have a lot of advice.
I'll let you fight this out offline.
Right.
She's up to
But
it.
if any of our viewers have any skills in scripting, either offline or inline, he's about to say Inworld, do let us know if you fancy volunteering for projects, because I've got a few requirements on that front there with the new sim. Over to Tara. Closing thoughts, Tara.
My only closing thought is my project this week is figuring out the ins and outs of importing rigged mesh DAEs and getting them to behave like clothing instead of as attached prims.
Yeah.
That's my project this
I
week.
tested importing a DAE of some interesting looking rocks, and of course not only did they arrive without textures, but I don't know what I did when I imported it, but it was a chunk of rocks and they were bigger than this entire sim. So they got de-res pretty quickly. But trial and error, that's half of the fun of it. And
Oh, yes.
we are really so pleased to be in this new venue on our own sim. And Metalworld Broadcasting Sim is available for anybody really who wants to come in and film programs. You know, we can find spots for you where our logo isn't intruding or anything and stuff like that. The idea is that it's a broadcasting centre for people interested in broadcasting and filming. And we'll be open to all. And if there are snags with permissions, we'll sort it out eventually. So I'd like to thank all my guests again today. Thank you, Truelie Telling, who's over on the stage waiting to take us out.
Oh, thank you. It's really been fun now.
Great to have you here. Thank you to Nara Nuke, or Nara Malone from Nara's Nuke.
Thanks for having me.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Oh boy, are we having fun with these NPCs.
Me too.
And thank you to Butch Arnold, who joined us quite late in the proceedings. So it's been absolutely great to have him here. And obviously the authority to go to on many things.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Thanks for having me.
And thank you to the man behind Great Canadian Grid and the person who has facilitated our presence here very much. Very special thanks to Roddie Macchi.
Oh, you're welcome. And we're proud to have you here. That's good.
We're proud to be here too. He says, raising the Canadian flag. We share a queen in common.
Yes, we do. We share the queen.
We share the queen. Indeed, we do. And thank you as always to Maria. Thank you, Maria. To Maria.
Thank you for having me, Mal. It's always a pleasure.
And thank you to Tara as always. Tara.
You're most welcome.
All right. Well, you have been watching the Inworld Review, brought to you in association with AVTV. If you want to see our past episodes, or indeed a replay of this episode in glorious high definition, do check us out at slartist.com. That's SLARTIST.com, and the version there is good old HTML5, so it should work on your iPad, your Android, your smart TV, your Windows machine, your Linux machine, or indeed, what's that other one? Mac, yes, that one. Should work anywhere. It is thanks to everybody, and I'm going to, it feels a bit odd to do a closing line before Trudy plays, but I'll say the usual anyway. It's good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or indeed good tomorrow, depending on wherever and whenever you are. And to take us out from the show today is back over to our wonderful friend Trudy Telling.
Take a breath. The hard part's done. What a unique, what a team. We're number one. Yeah, you can see there's more to me than just a higher cut. You know where I'm going, where I'm coming from. Give me a hug. Makes everything okay. Give me a hug. Of troubles melt away. Here and now, you and me. Arms around now, squeeze. Give me some love. That's my drug, my take on me. Give me a hug. Well, I gotta go, but I'll be back as soon as I can, enjoying the afterglow of a real great show. Before I get in that van and hit the road, I'm on the barnstorm plan. Well, I got one more demand. Give me a hug, ooh, yeah, sing along, makes everything okay. Give me a hug. Old troubles melt away, here and now, you and me, arms around, now squeeze, give me some love, that's mine, I'm back, don't play, give me a hug. Oh, I got friends and family all over the world, I find you everywhere, I'm such a lucky girl. Party calls the party, so it's so heart to heart, and love's undergo. Give me a hug, makes everything okay. Give me a hug, troubles melt away. Oh yeah, God knows. Way to play except here today. Give me a hug. Yeah, take a breath. The heart's done. Give me a hug. Maybe another one. Give me a hug. Give me a hug.
And we give you hugs in return. Wonderful, Truelie.
Indeed. That was inspired by life in the metaverse and Second Life and out here. Love the hugs.
Great stuff. So we'll all stay quiet for a minute and we're out of here. See you next week.